Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Abam. We're continuing Mishna Berura Daf Hashavua. We're learning Siman Nun Hey, Seif, Zayin. Yashikach to Rabbi Yeager for giving the Dvar Halach yesterday. Shkayach. Seif Zayin. Kisha Echad Mispalel Levadai. If somebody davens alone, Nachain Sha'acherim Yamtinu Milay Merkadesh Ad Shigmar Kadesh Yizga Gamhu. If someone's davening by himself, it is correct that others should wait for him to say Kaddish until he finishes, so he could be Zoicha to answer Kaddish. Says Mishna Berura Nachain, Va'afilu im yesh minyan belada, even if there's a minyan without him. So here you have a guy, he's taking his good, his merry old time, but they should wait for him. Why? Because he could be this way. He should be Zoicha for Kaddish. Says Mishna Berura, the same thing would be if someone's sleeping, you need to wake him up. If he doesn't want to get up, you don't have to wait. According to Shulchan Mitzdaref, right? The shita of the Shulchan Aruch is that a yashen is Mitzdaref. We learned earlier that the Taz argues on the Mechaber legabe yashen, and he holds a yashen ein mitzdaref, and the Pri Chadash also says a yashen is like a shoita, and that's why lechatchila you should wake someone up who's sleeping, if you need him for a minyan. The Be'er Halacha was so choishesh for the shita of the Taz that even b'shas hadchak, it's not Parsha. You could rely on the shita of the Shulchan Aruch that you could be mitzdaref a yashen. He says the Prima Gadim says, even though the Prima Gadim says hasomech Shulchan Aruch le'hivsid, the Berkei Yosef, the Chida, the Dar Chachayim agree with the Taz. Okay, so the bottom line is that it's preferable to wake someone up. Kedei sheyizka v'davke mishar shus b'yom l'spalel, provided that there's time left in the day to daven. If he doesn't have time to daven and he's being marech, if there's not enough time, then you have to say the Kaddish, you have to say the Kedusha right away. So here's my question. Number one, what do you mean so he could be Zoicha? Let him be Zoicha through Shemei HaKoina. He'll stop, drop, and roll, right? Let him follow what Tosfos says in Brachos. He'll stop and he'll be Yotzei, the Kedusha, through Shemei HaKoina. Apparently, that's not ideal. In other words, it's worthwhile for the tzibur to wait for him to finish and actually say the words of Kedusha rather than be yotzei through Shemei HaKoina. The Dirshu points out that later on, Siman Kuf Chav Daled, the Ramah writes that if there are people in the kahal that are marach in their tefillah, you don't have to wait. Why? The Mishna Berura says, Tercha de Tzibura. So why over here does Mechaber say you should wait for a guy to finish Shemone Esrei? But don't we say later on that it's Tercha de Tzibura to wait? So the Makar Chaim answers, there it's talking about regarding Kedusha, and by the time, there it's talking about starting the Chazar Sashatz. And by the time the Shatz gets there, the guy will probably finish his Shemone Esrei. But here we're talking about Kaddish after Shemone Esrei. Here the Mechaber says Kaddish. See, over there it's talking about starting Chazar Sashatz. So by the time you start, the guy will get up to Kedusha. But here we're talking about maybe Mariv. So this way, there's more of an inyan to wait, legabi the Kaddish, because he's not gonna finish in time. The Shulchan Aruch Harav says the chiluk is that there it's talking about a guy who's davening long. He's davening extra long. Don't wait for him. Here we're talking about people who are davening at a regular speed and they couldn't keep up. Those people you should wait for. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zonenfeld, Shalsei Tshuva Salmas Chaim, says that here we're talking about mincha. So mincha, people are not busy with their work because they're already done for the day. Later on we're talking about shachris, that there we have to be more worried about tercha de tzibura. Now, la'aniyas daiti, it's very difficult to say here we're talking about mincha, and there we're talking about shachris. We're in Hilchos brachos here. You know, I don't think it's seems to be difficult possibility to say here we're talking about mincha. People are not so busy mincha time, and furthermore, nowadays people are more busy mincha time than shachris. People go late to work, but once you're in the middle of the day, it's hard to You have a guy who's he has this laundry list of all the people he's davening for. It looks like the telephone book. So why does everyone have to wait for him? Because he needs to say a whole list of names. Hopefully most of those people had either refuah shalema already, or okay. Weiter. Sivchas. Chirish hamadaber. So the bottom line is, should you wait? Well, later on we say it's tercha de tzibura. Why here or not? Either because here we're talking about people who are not davening who are not being marich, or here we're talking about a situation where it's kaddish and they're not going to catch it some other way. Sivches. Chirish hamadaber ve'ein shomea. Chirish who could talk and not hear. Or shomea ve'ein hamadaber could hear and can't speak. Hein kepikchen u'mitztarfen. They're considered like regular, viable people, since they could either talk or hear. Someone who can hear or speak, he's like a shaita. Says Mishna Berura, V'das hataz kamam sim kuf chavdal sivkatan beis she'ein mitztarfen leminyan mi she'ein shemea af agav shu medaber. The Taz says you cannot join into a minyan someone who's not able to hear, even though he's able to speak. Why? He can't hear the brachos the Shliach Tzibur is saying. Many agree with the Shulchan Aruch that being able to talk is not ma'akev legabe tziruf to a minyan. If he could sort of time the brachos, and when he sees people are saying Amen, he'll answer with them, Dumya dahanafas hasidurin, similar to waving the flags in Alexandria, Alexandria, Shemevin, where they understand, where you could recognize at the time Shel Tzibor finishes the bracha and you answer Amen. Mitzarif l'koleyama, it joins up, you could be mitzarif according to everyone, meaning even the Taz would say if you could keep up, it's mitzarif. What about someone who's deaf, who can't hear at all, and he could talk, but he doesn't speak in a way that people understand, which is very common, where someone who's deaf, because he can't hear, he can't really speak in a clear manner. Rav Shlomo Zalman says, if people could understand him, not just relatives, then he's like a pikeach. That's what, and Rabbi Yashiv agrees. But Rav Shlomo Zalman adds, Mistama, he should not get an aliyah because he cannot make a bracha karai. What about someone who could only hear with a hearing aid? And he answers Amen with the call. The opinion of Rav Shlomo Zalman is, even though he's not actually hearing the voice of the medaber, he's hearing some kind of electronic impulse which is changed into a voice. Since he is answering Amen, he's mitzaref. Again, this is only needed according to the Taz. According to the Shulchan Aruch, even someone who can't hear at all can be mitzaref. The Rav Shlomo Zalman said that the Chazon Ish told him that it's possible that since with a hearing aid you hear in a way that's indistinguishable from the actual voice and it's immediate, Chazon Ish says it could be that's mamish shmiya. And the Rav Shlomo Zalman said it's a chiddush gadol that he doesn't understand. Rav Moshe also disagrees. Rav Moshe says a hearing aid is not considered hearing. Okay, Sif Tes. La'olam hu katan hashevesh teisaris achashir ben yud gimel v'yom echad u'shnasi iber bas yud gimel chaydash. A person remains a katan forever until he brings 2 hairs. After he's 13 and a day, And if it's an Ibriyar like this year, you need 13 months. Says the Mishna Berura, Shtei Saros. Now we learned earlier that it does not have to be B'makam Erva. The Mishna Berura in Sivkat and Chafei said, B'shar Makoy Mesagaf. The 2 hairs could be anywhere. But here the Mishna Berura says, U'makayman v'shir gadlusin mavar be'evan ezer b'sim kuf non hey sif yud zayin v'yud ches. And the Dirshu pointed out that there, the Mechaber goes like the Shittas HaRambam, that it has to be Davka b'makam erva. Okay, weiter. Acher Shia, Sheken Kibbel Chazal. This is a tradition of Chazal, Misinai Shali Kari Azachar Ish, that a boy is not called a man ad Sheyishlamai Giyud Gimel Shana until he finishes 13 years. V'yavi Gam Kein Shtei Saros. V'u Meklal Kol HaShiur and Shekibel Chazal Misinai. This is included in all of the measurements that Chazal received at Sinai. V'amnam Kaimelan. However, we hold Kivan Shehigiu L'chlal Shanim, that once he reaches the 13 years, Chazaka Sheviu Shtei Saros. It's a Chazaka that he will bring that he brought 2 hairs. Therefore, even if we see he doesn't have 2 hairs, we're concerned, we suspect he had them and they fell. These hairs fall out. Sometimes out of weakness. Sometimes because the person's too thin, sometimes because the person's too fat. We do not rely on this chazaka completely. Ella the daininan like a suffix, and therefore we treat it like a suffix. Therefore, any matter which is biblical, we're machmer with rabbanan l'kula. Anything which is rabbinic, we're mekel. So therefore, he could be mitzdarif to a zimun. However, he cannot be mezamein lahoitzi acherim. By the way, what if you check the kid and he doesn't have 2 hairs? Could he be mitzdarif him to a minyan? I would think not. Even the Mishna Berura here is mashma, you could. Because he says by a drabanan, in the above mentioned scenario where you checked him, we're mekel. Now what's interesting is, v'ayin lekaman b'sim kuf tzadik tez magen avram sivkat and zayin, v'tzarchi and ktsas. There the Magen Avram says if you check a kid and he doesn't have 2 hairs, we're not mitzaref him as zimun. And the Mishna Berura also says that in Sivkat and Chav Zayin. Then Siman Kuf Tzadik Tes, Sivkat and Chav Zayin, the Mishna Berura says, if you check a kid, he doesn't have 2 hairs, you can't be mitzaref him to a minyan. Or you can't be mitzaref him, to a zimun, which is a stira to what the Mishna Berura says here, that if you check him and he doesn't have here, you should assume it fell out for drabanans. V'ayin le'el Sivkat and Lamed Aleph mashikasavnu sham bepri megadim. That the Pri Megadim said that the din of a gadol who doesn't have. The Pri Megadim said like this: if you didn't check a kid, then the Roiv says he's a gadol, but it's a miud hamatzoi that he's still a katan. So the Rabbanan were machmer la'inyan da'iraisas. It's not a chumra da'iraisa for a da'iraisa; it's a chumra d'Rabbanan for a da'iraisa. Ben Yud Gimel Shana va'aviv mehemen al zeh. The father is believed to say the kid has 2 hairs. Even if, let's say, the kid looks very young, the father's believed, v'lo yesh acher, another person is not believed. You would need 2 edim. Kein yisa b'kedushin samach da'ad amarab b'toyz dir mas neman. Why don't we say rechanam b'yisurin? I don't know. What if the Katan himself says that he's a Gadol? We can't rely on him. But the Kaf HaChaim says that if the Katan is a Yorei Shamayim, then he's Neman. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman also says it could be you can rely on him. Why? It's Milsa da Asad Lehisgalais. Okay, interesting. Now, v'im meisav v'eni yadei masay nasa ben yud gimel shama. The father died. You don't know when the kid's bar mitzvah is. L'chayra dinahu. The chayra the din is the mekim and shevi shtei sarais. That if he brought 2 hairs, chayiv li zaher b'mitzvahs. Ha Torah kedin shar gadol. He's chayiv to be careful in the midst of the Torah like any other gadol. The sveika da iraisahu. It's a suffik da iraisa. Okay, Rabbi say. The interesting svara, what about a kid? You're mesupik if he's a gadol or not. So could you be mitzdarif him to a minyan? So l'chayra, one factor is, if you're mesupik, you have a kid. He doesn't, I don't know my birthday, I don't remember. I'm not sure what my birthday is. Either I'm a gadol or not. Could you mitzdarif him to a minyan? L'chayra, safek d'rabbanan l'kula. But there's another factor. There's a shita, you could be mitzdarif a katan to a minyan. So it's a svek sveika. So even though in Sif Daled, right, we said Yesh Matir and Loimer Davar Shabakdush B'Tisha B'Tzerev Katan, and the Mechaber said V'loi Niran Devrayim, but the Ramah said Yesh Noyagin Lahakel B'Shas Hadchak. But if you're Mesupik, maybe the kid's a Gadol, then you have a Svek Sveika, you could throw it into the equation. That's a very interesting idea. When you have a kid, you know, he's not sure, is my birthday this week or next week? Okay, Rabbi, say have a good day. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Thank you for coming. Shkoyach.
Recording stopped.
If what?
Is